Good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Matt Fitzgerald, founder of Dream Run Camp in Flagstaff, Arizona, to discuss his entrepreneurial journey. Mr. Fitzgerald is not only an entrepreneur, he's also a prolific writer, public speaker, and coach. He's also a distance runner, having completed 50 marathons with time, his fastest time being 2 hours, 39 minutes, 30 seconds. In February 2020, his life took a sudden, unexpected turn, ultimately leading him to start the running camp in Flagstaff. Mr. Fitzgerald, thanks for taking the time to visit with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for joining. It's an honor to be with you.
So let me start with the first question, which is, tell us a little more about your business. Students did read the New York Times article I shared with them about you, but could you tell them a little bit more?
Yes, so adult running camps are not a new phenomenon. There are many of them all over the United States and the world. Most of them are pretty similar in format. Usually they last 3 to 4 days. They're usually hosted at some popular running destination, maybe San Diego, California, or Boulder, Colorado. Typical size is maybe 20 to 30 people. Everyone arrives at the same time. They do a lot of running and other stuff for 3 to 4 days, and then they scatter. Dream Run Camp is different in that it's a running camp that never ends. So it operates out of, where I am right now, property in Flagstaff, Arizona, another very popular destination for runners. And we operate more or less year round, and it's smaller scale. So we only have a handful of runners at a time, and it's a rolling attendance format. So rather than like a uniform start and end date with everyone arriving and leaving at the same time, runners come individually on their own schedule whenever it suits them. They can stay, the minimum stay is 1 week. And then the maximum stay is 12 weeks. And so it's a little bit more loosely structured than a traditional running camp, but there still is some structure to it with group runs every day, coaches' office hours every afternoon, and other stuff.
And the New York Times said that you started this business when you could not run yourself because of long COVID.
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit more about that? Not just the facts, but also sort of the emotional toll that must have been. Could you sort of shed some light on that?
Yes. So I started running at age 11, influenced by my father, who ran marathons, and I looked up to him, and he made running seem cool to me. And so I became a runner and remained one. And then, after graduating from college, I started a career as a running journalist or an endurance sports journalist, and eventually an author, and then a coach. And then I started another business that is also related to endurance sports called 80/20 Endurance. So, I mean, it really was, running was my entire life. Like, it was my business. It was my hobby and my passion. It was a big part of my identity. And when I lost the ability to run, yes, it was a lot to swallow, but it didn't change all that much. I still had my passion for running. I still wanted to be as involved in the sport as I could be, but I just felt like I needed a new outlet, a new way to channel my passion. And so I kind of pivoted. The idea was to pivot towards serving others, putting others first, other runners. And that was really, and the other piece was that when I attended running camps, often not feeling very well at all because of my long COVID symptoms, I always felt better in that environment when I was around runners and coaching them and serving them. It just took me outside of my own suffering. And so I decided, well, maybe I should just be at a running camp that never ends, and I'll feel better. So that was the spark.
So, Mr. Fitzgerald, one of the things I had read before reading your story in the New York Times was that scientists are divided about long COVID. People have different views on long COVID, scientists. Your story was the first time sort of it became very real to me, and now interacting with you, because many scientists are saying it's not a real thing, it's just in the head. But you don't seem to be someone who is kind of, a person who would have given up running just if it was in your head. So could you maybe share a little bit to the students about how you processed this? It must have been a shock to you as well.
Yes, it was more difficult for me to understand what I was experiencing because I was sick for a month with COVID-19, and then I appeared to make a full recovery and was seemingly healthy for about 6 months before I started to experience a new set of symptoms. So because of that gap, it wasn't immediately obvious to me that there was a connection to the virus. But over time, as I documented my symptoms and saw doctors, everything pointed to long COVID. There's symptoms like fatigue that are a symptom of just about everything. And so that doesn't really narrow things down a bit. But some of the, stranger and more peculiar symptoms, like neuropathy or, numbness and tingling in the extremities, the brain fog, a variety of other symptoms, dysautonomia, which is kind of a dysregulation of the nervous system. Everything just sort of lined up with long COVID. And yeah, I mean, it's all very real to me. I mean, I have been at times, I'm doing better now, but there were times when I was more or less incapacitated and really couldn't do anything at all. And yeah, so all very real to me.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Our student Sarah has a good question for you. So Sarah, would you like to ask your question directly? Sarah? We'll wait for Sarah to come back to ask. She's trying to figure out her camera and that.
Okay.
Let me ask you this then in the meantime. You had started businesses before this. So was there any challenges in starting and running this business, or was it pretty straightforward?
Well, there are plenty of challenges, yes. One of them was my health. It's challenging to start a business even when you're in perfect health. And for me, I was not. And some days I just, felt poorly, and it was difficult to do the work required. Another challenge was that this was basically a solo endeavor. I mean, I've had a little bit of help around the periphery, but mostly it was all on me. And I don't have I don't know if there is such a thing as a traditional background for an entrepreneur, but I don't have like a business background. So some of the skills that I'm sure even the young students on this call already have, I really did not, I don't really know my way around a spreadsheet very much, never written an actual business plan. So I had to, wing it in certain respects, or at least outsource certain things. So yes, plenty of challenges. Though, it's like, I wouldn't have wanted it to be easy. I definitely wanted it to be challenging. The only challenge that's really unacceptable is losing faith in the idea. So that fortunately has not happened, and that makes the other challenges always surmountable.
Wonderful. So just so that the students remember where Sarah's question is coming from. So when you started this business, you were sick with long COVID, which has no clear cure. And Sarah has a question about how people around you reacted when you decided to do this. So Sarah?
Hi, sorry, I couldn't get my camera and I was trying to figure it all out. But my question was for you, when you initially wanted to start up your company, did you have friends or family members kind of be like, is this a good idea? Is it not? Anybody your support system?
Yes, I mean, people who know me well know that I'm a risk taker, and I have a spirit of adventure. So it wasn't shocking, I don't think, to anyone in my family or my friends or network, that I wanted to take a chance on starting this. There were some people who questioned the model to a certain degree because so my wife and I sold our home in California, relocated to Flagstaff, and now we operate this business out of our primary residence, and so people thought that was kind of nuts that I would have we would have strangers coming into and out of our private home all the time, and I had my own doubts about the viability of that model, but so far so good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have to admit, when I talked to Mr. Fitzgerald a few, before this call as well as earlier on a phone call, the idea of strangers living with them for an extended period of time is also something that I sort of had more questions about. So how did you deal with sort of the legal and the other sort of issues surrounding this?
Yeah, this is one of the areas where I lacked knowledge and experience and expertise, so I asked for help. So I hired a lawyer, and sort of ran the business model by the lawyer. Also, a tax accountant, to get his view on the tax implications, and and also we intentionally bought a property in an area with very lax HOA restrictions. So my neighborhood is full of Airbnbs, VRBOs, that type of thing. So yeah, I just dotted all my I's and crossed my T's. The lawyer I hired helped me craft a waiver that everyone who comes here signs, which just gives me some minimizes my exposure. And then I have a really good tax advisor who was able to show me how to structure the business in a way that it was all above board and legal, and would give me certain tax advantages without breaking any rules. So all of that I had to rely on outside experts to help me with.
And if I may, probably a very supportive spouse too, to make it work.
Yes, very much so. Yes, I definitely won the spousal lottery, and it's been great. She's sort of my secret weapon at Dream Run Camp, because people, because I'm an author, people feel like they know me a little bit, and that's part of why this works. They feel comfortable and safe coming into my home because they've read one or two of my books and like them. But my wife is a constant presence here, and I think she adds a lot to the experience for people who come here without there having any expectations around that, which has been fun.
And we do have some question about your books, but that we'll ask in a few minutes. Leah has a couple of questions about your business. So
Okay.
Leah.
Hi. Okay, so I have two different questions. First, I was going to ask how big your property is, and if you have a track there, or what kind of equipment that you provide to people, or is it just like street running or anything like that? That was my first question. And then the second was, who is your ideal person to come to your camp, or what kind of person do you see the most coming in?
Yes. Okay. So the first question, so we now actually have two properties. One we're just renting. It's sort of a stopgap. But the headquarters, the main house, it's like 3,400 square feet. So not a mansion, but a good sized property. It's on a large lot. It has 5 bedrooms, including it has an attached guest house. In this part of the world, they call them casitas. And so it's basically, it has it's like a 1-bedroom apartment inside the house. And that's where my wife and I hole up because, you know, that's where I'm speaking to you from now. I have my office here. We have our own kitchen here. We have privacy. We have a separate entrance and exit if we want to. So we can get into and out of the casita both from inside the house and from outside the house. It makes it kind of modular. So we're always around, but we can just have the privacy that we need. So there are 4 bedrooms in the main house. And I had a blast. So we bought a brand new, it was newly built house because I wanted a blank canvas to make it really like the ultimate runner's retreat. So we have a full commercial quality gym. There's all art all around the walls that is like running related. We have a library full of running books. We have a recovery lounge with equipment like a hyperbaric chamber. It's one thing LeBron James and I have in common is we both own hyperbaric chambers. And then we've really had a lot of fun with the exterior. So it's beautifully landscaped. I just, you know, when I did my budgeting, I set aside, you know, about half of my initial investment for outside of the house. So we've got a pool, we've got a sauna outside, just, you know, hardscaping, fire pit. We're not done yet. Phase 2 is about to begin. So we ran out of warm weather for phase 1. So that's the main house. And then after the New York Times article came out and it got a lot of attention and more people wanted to sign up, we just rented kind of a decommissioned Airbnb about a mile from the main house. And that's just sort of holding us over until we find a more permanent solution. I would love to actually buy one of my neighbors' houses and knock down the fence in between because that would double our capacity pretty easily. And then for running, we don't have a track. We do have a treadmill in the gym, but you know, Flagstaff is just filled with beautiful running venues, a lot of trails. Even the paved roads, or many of them are in, you know, beautiful spots with forest views and lake views. So we do a group run every morning, and we just choose a different location for each run. Sometimes we'll head down the hill to Sedona, which is less than an hour away. Very different geographically, well, topographically, and that's fun. We'll just do a day in Sedona. Then to your second question, you know, part of the ethos of Dream Run Camp is, you know, I was never a professional runner myself, but I had the passion of a professional runner, and I allowed myself to commit to the sport more than most runners of my ability level did. And it just led me on like an amazing transformative journey. And so Dream Run Camp is really about making that type of journey available to anyone who wants it. So we're all really about knocking down barriers. You know, a lot of runners they'll be attracted by the idea of coming to Dream Run Camp, but they'll think, oh, well, I'm too old, or I'm too new to the sport, or I'm too slow, or whatever, you know, all these reasons they don't deserve to come. And in all of our messaging, our branding and our marketing, it's about knocking down those barriers and saying, like, you're exactly who we want here. And of course, not everyone can come here. You know, people who, you know, have summers off from work or are retired or have more disposable income, it's easier for them to come here. But we have done a good job of getting quite a bit of diversity along a variety of axes. So, you know, we've had runners age 23 to 75 here. We've had runners from Europe, from South America, from India. And for me, like, you know, I don't want too much of any one type of runner. I'm trying to get as much variety as I can. And we're doing a pretty good job of it so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And this is a good time for me to ask Juliana to ask her question about your books on camera. I was not planning to ask you anything about the books because I was planning to focus just on your entrepreneurship thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Juliana had a very good question.
Hi, yeah. So when I was reading like the article, it said that you had like written and like co-written tons of books. So I was just wondering like what your favorite book that you've ever like written was.
Right on. It's usually whatever the most recent book is. I've become I've become a little bit biased toward recency bias, they call it. But one that remains very close to my heart is Life is a Marathon, which is, most of my books are sort of how-to in nature. They're about, helping runners, get faster and fitter and enjoy the sport more. Life is a Marathon is really about my story. And also, so my relationship with running and also my relationship with my wife, Nataki, is tied into it. And, running has been really a vehicle for personal growth for me throughout my life. And so that's sort of the theme of that memoir. And, I've had some ups and downs on my road, and so it's all in there. It's very, very open, very vulnerable. A lot of stuff that people who consider themselves fans of mine, having read other books, like they had no idea about my whole story. And so I was able to kind of share that. I think it makes me more relatable to athletes. Yep. So check it out.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
And Mason has a question about what I think is the most unique aspect of your business, right? People living in your own home. So I'll let Mason ask his question.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
So yeah, you had spoke on it earlier and touched on it. Folks living in your house for the running camp. Just a general question. What is that like? Because you don't know a lot of people's backgrounds and where they're coming from. So do you have any concerns with that? Or are you just nonchalant about it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, fundamental stuff about, my safety or my wife's safety, no, I don't have concerns about that. The biggest, I think, realistic concern is, having someone come here who might be disruptive in some way. Maybe it could be like a substance abuse problem, that sort of thing, that could happen. And so, I have a few things to my advantage. One is, the people who come here feel like I said, that they at least know something about me before they come here. So there's some self-selection that happens there, so even if I don't know anything about them, they feel like they know something about me. That's helpful. Also, the scale of it is very small. So it gives me the opportunity to know more than nothing about each person who comes here before they come. There's no booking engine on my website. So the booking is always done through one-to-one communication between me and the person who comes here. I offer everyone who, so if you go to the Dream Run Camp website, you'll see that the main call to action is like fill out our no obligation questionnaire. And so that comes straight to me. And then in my response to that, I offer everyone the opportunity to schedule a video call with me one-on-one. So most people take me up on that. So I've had, half an hour on the phone talking to the person. And again, that's still not a lot to go on, but it's more than nothing. And then the rest is just, I have this phrase that popped into my head at some point in creating this thing. We don't want the best people. We just want the best in people. So I think there's a lot that I can do as the leader and kind of organizer to create an environment where, I think everyone has some good in them, and it's on me to create an environment where that comes out, where people just feel comfortable, showing their best qualities. And so it's a little bit like team building, and it's always like a relatively small number of people. We've never had, I think, more than 7 or 8 runners here, and that's a pretty manageable number. And I do have a couple of people who assist me. And I put a lot of care into creating and maintaining that environment. So almost everyone who comes here, they're anxious when they ring the doorbell and I answer it. I can see it in their eyes, and so it's really more the other way around. They're wondering if I'm crazy. I'm not wondering if they if they are, but I very immediately start to present myself and and give certain cues that get people to just relax and feel comfortable. And I see it very, very quickly. The anxiety goes away. And usually when someone arrives, there's almost always other people already here who've been here for a minute. And that helps them with kind of the acculturation. They've already absorbed the Dream Run Camp vibes, and then they can actually be ambassadors for our way of doing things.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So Matt, I'm also going to ask Riley to ask her question. And her question, let her ask, and then I'll sort of contextualize it if needed. Riley, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Hi, yes, my camera isn't working. I cannot figure it out, but I can still ask my question. So I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but my question was if you always had the idea that you would want to start a running camp, such as the one you have now, or if it was just kind of related to the long COVID and that whole situation. So yeah, that's my question.
Yep. Yeah, so I did not, that was not a long-standing dream of mine. For many, many years, I was very, very focused on my writing first, and then, coaching second, and then starting another business came along, and that became a focus. But all of the coaching I did was remote. So I wasn't meeting face to face with people. I coached people all over the world. And no, I just had I enjoyed, I did coach at at running camps organized by other people, but I would just, drop in for 3 days and then return home. And it was really, just, getting sick was just changed my calculation about a lot of things. Yeah, it was actually freeing in certain respects, because I felt like in a way I had nothing to lose, because I was really struggling. And so that actually gave me a certain amount of peace to do something kind of radical. Like that's exactly what I was craving. But yeah, I think I said it to the New York Times reporter. I don't think I would have started Dream Run Camp if I had remained healthy.
Great, thank you so much.
So at this stage, Matt, we know about your business between what we've discussed and between the New York Times article. I think we have a good understanding of the business, but we don't know much about you as a person other than that you were a runner and you were an author. And at some point you said you were a sports journalist. Tell us a little bit about your life growing up. Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? You said your dad was a marathon runner. Tell us a little bit more about that part of your life.
Yeah, I grew up mostly in New Hampshire, very far from where I am now, in the seacoast area of New Hampshire. And I have 2 brothers. I'm the middle child. My mom was a social worker and then transitioned into marriage and family therapy. My dad is also a writer, so I am very much like my father. So I inherited my passion for running from him and for writing. My dad has published a number of books, so I was aware of this from the time I was a small kid. There were novels with my dad's name on the spine on bookshelves and in the house I grew up in. And yeah, it was great to actually to be a chip off the old block in that respect, because my father, when he was growing up, he didn't know you could be a professional writer. He had to discover that for himself. I didn't have to, and so I had just a great supportive role model, like right there in the house for both my running and my writing. And the other thing I got from him was he had a fair amount of regret in terms of the path, the career path he had charted. He didn't regret becoming a writer, but he regretted just he still had to work kind of like a day job that he didn't love and write in stolen moments. And so he encouraged me and my brothers to find and follow our passion. he said, money is important, but that'll take care of itself if you find something you love doing and you're good at doing. Eventually, it'll all work out. So I took that to heart, and that, I think it's part of the reason I've always been comfortable with risk in my career, because I feel like I'm not really risking anything in the long run if I love what I'm doing.
Okay, so it seems to me from what you said that your father was the biggest influence in your life growing up. Would that be correct to say?
Very accurate, yes.
Okay. And so how did he and the rest of your family see entrepreneurship? Did they sort of, or back then, was it perceived favorably, or was it, assumed or hoped that you would get a good, stable job with, a marquee brand company?
Yeah. No, everyone in my immediate family has been very supportive. So when I was 24 years old, so I went to a small liberal arts college outside of Philadelphia called Haverford College. And after I graduated, I was looking to start a career as a writer, and my father suggested that I move to California. And so I didn't have anything. So I moved to San Francisco, having never set foot in that city before. I was 24. I did not have a job lined up. I did not have a place to live lined up. I had no savings. I barely knew anyone who lived there, but I thought that would be a good place to try and start a writing career. So, I mean, that was really my dad's advice, was to take this giant risk when I was 24. So that's my dad. So he was never going to start singing a different tune later on. And, I did struggle initially to find my footing, but, I do have a lot of, I have a work ethic, and, even by that age, I was an experienced writer, because when I wasn't in school writing, I was writing on the side. So before long, I started to carve out to achieve some success, as a writer and then an author. And then I think my family just stopped worrying about me, because I seemed to be okay figuring things out on my own. So yeah, when the idea for Dream Run Camp came around, it was pretty much from my father and my brothers. The message was, go for it.
And tell us a little bit about college. You said you went to a small college near Philadelphia. What was your major? Did you study entrepreneurship at all? How was entrepreneurship seen in your college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Haverford College is it's smaller than a lot of high schools. I think it had about 1,100 students when I was there. It's the brother college of Bryn Mawr, all women's college, basically right across the street. And students at Haverford are allowed to take classes there. Also, Swarthmore College, which is nearby. They're all they're very selective liberal arts colleges. So great professors, smart students. But but it was liberal arts, so only like the core majors. There was no, you couldn't major in journalism, you could major in English. So like just very bread and butter types of stuff. I was 9 years old when I decided I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. By the time I was in high school, I was writing for one of the local newspapers in my area. So like I knew what the path I was on. And so college for me was just an opportunity to, I quite honestly, I didn't even need to go to college. I just could have bumbled along and become a writer without it. But, there was a lot else to it. I did a junior year abroad in Scotland, and, that wouldn't have happened if I had skipped college. So got a lot out of it, but it didn't really affect, my path very much, because I was already on it.
So you got an English, you were an English major, you got a degree in English.
Yep.
And after college, you moved to San Francisco.
Yep.
But what happened in San Francisco? I'm assuming it wasn't all easy going there.
No, yeah, I mentioned, like the memoir I wrote, Life is a Marathon. Yeah, there's some good stories about my early early days in the San Francisco Bay Area there. Yeah, I mean, it was, I was 24, so still basically made of rubber. Knocked me down, I bounced back up. But it was challenging. My big break came when I got a job. The first proper job I got there was with a startup endurance sports magazine called Multisport. And it was based in Sausalito in Marin County, just on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. The guy who started that magazine, his name is Bill Katowski, and he originally had founded Triathlete magazine, the world's first triathlon magazine, back in 1983. And so he became kind of a mentor to me. It was a skeleton crew, a very small staff. So sometimes I would write half of every issue of a magazine. And he just let me cut loose. I mean, he guided me, but he also just let me develop my own unique voice. And it was just an amazing opportunity. So yeah, like I mentioned, I had grown up wanting to be a writer. I didn't necessarily expect to write about sports. But it was just, as chance had it, would have it, that was the break I got. And I decided I loved it. I was actually at that point thinking about going to grad school. I even applied, but ended up not going because I was having so much fun in endurance sports journalism. And as it turned out, like that one open door was the only open door I needed. And I just blasted through it and was on my way.
I have to admit, this is the first time I've heard that in sports journalism, there's a niche for endurance sports journalism. I had no idea. So that's good. Grant has a question for you. Grant Hansen, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Give me just 1 second and see if I can start my video. There we go. So I kind of wanted to ask, like you were just talking about a niche kind of within this whole sector. How did you go about making the connections to launch a business as like a running coach in that? Because there's so many different ways to go about it. Like, how do you stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I get this question from aspiring young coaches all the time. And I always find myself feeling a little wrong-footed because my path is very unique and idiosyncratic and is not really much of a model for other people. So, the way it happened with me is, initially when I was writing for magazines like Multisport and Triathlete but I did not position myself as an expert. I was just a journalist. And so I would interview experts and then share their advice in articles. But over time, I started to develop my own expertise. And there was, a point when I just made the choice to put myself forward as an expert on running and endurance sports. My very first book was just a training guide for triathletes. And once that book was out, it's not even fair, but people treated it like a PhD, like, oh, this guy must know what he's talking about. He has a published book. And almost before I knew it, like I had a reputation, like, people in the sport knew who I was. And that's a kind of currency, just to have that type of reputation. I waited a long time to get into coaching just because I knew a lot of great coaches and I felt that they were born for it in a way that I wasn't. But over time, just more and more people wanted me to coach them. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And so, getting my name out there was already a solved problem by the time I started coaching. And so that's the biggest problem for a lot of newer coaches is, just cutting through the noise and just put it, cutting through the noise so that that people recognize that they're there. And for me, I didn't have to deal with that at all. It's almost the opposite problem.
Awesome. Thank you.
So earlier you talked about the facilities available in the Dream Run camp for people who come. And the way you described it, it seems to me that there is a lot of upfront investment going into
Yep.
the business. I don't mean in terms of time, but financially.
Yep.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, yes, a lot of upfront investment. I mean, the nice thing is that it is real estate. And so, you know, my wife and I talked about this, just, you know, talking through the various risks. And I told her, you know, I think the worst case scenario is we invest a lot in getting it off the ground, and either it doesn't work or we decide it's no fun and we don't want to keep doing it, or it's just too stressful, and then we just flip the property. And it might, it might not work out wonderfully, financially. We might take a bit of a haircut if in that kind of worst case scenario. But there are worst case scenarios, right? Just because we were buying like hard assets, whose value would probably only increase. So there was a great deal of upfront investment, but it's a pretty safe one as far as they go here. And also, we get to enjoy ourselves everything that we've invested in here. I mean, yep. Spent a lot of money on a pool. Well, we swim in it too. Spent a lot of money on a gym, like we use it too.
So, okay, I can understand that, the investment is something you are also enjoying, sort of doing it yourself. But are you breaking even then? Or are you not breaking even with all this financial investment?
Yeah, like we haven't broken even on the total investment, but we're definitely cash flow positive now. So a lot of that that investment is you're inventing the wheel, and once the wheel is invented, you don't have to reinvent it. So now in a sense, one way of looking at it is just, we now live where we live for free. Our mortgage is covered, our utilities are covered, all those like all that overhead, just to live somewhere, it's zeroed out for us, and then some.
Okay. And so when you make all this investment, then this business doesn't seem to be sort of, temporary, to use an easy word, right? I mean, it's not like tomorrow, if you feel better, then you're back to running, because we don't know with long COVID, right? We have no idea yet.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists don't know. I mean, when I say we, I think scientists don't know yet.
Yeah.
So it could be that in a year or 2 years, you are better and back in shape and, running again. So what is your future plans for the business?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking long term with this enterprise. It's I mean, my lifestyle, as part of this operation, I still do the stuff I did before. I still write. I still have my other business. But my lifestyle has changed. I'm out and about with runners, taking them to runs, taking them to appointments, what have you. And so sometimes I jokingly, like the other day, we did go down to Sedona, and we did a hike down there, with the runners who were staying here. And then we went out to lunch afterwards. And I jokingly said to the runners, my customers, like, I'm actually at work right now. You aren't. So I have a lifestyle that sort of looks like semi-retirement, where, it's just, it's like, it's fun and enjoyable and balanced. And especially like the coaching element of it, coaching is one of those professions where you not infrequently see people in their 70s and 80s, like still coaching, and really kind of coaching better than ever because they have more wisdom. And so I was looking ahead. In fact, in a certain respect, because of the long COVID, the way it had changed just my capacity to function, I sort of already thought of myself as in my 80s, even though I'm in my 50s. Yeah, I definitely was taking a long view, and wanted to see it as, I wanted to start something that I would still want to be doing and could be doing 30 years down the line.
Okay, so you see this camp growing
Mhm.
and serving more customers, more clients, more people. Is that an accurate description of what you said?
Yes, I mean, the core model is not very scalable, because, you know, people come here to have kind of, you know, like an intimate experience. And if it got big, it would be very much watered down. Like people wouldn't get as much one-on-one time with me. You know, it would just have a different vibe. So I think that we can get to, part of the reason I want to buy my neighbor's house, is like we can get to having like 12 runners here year round. And so that's a good solid core business right there, if you just look at the economics of it. And then we're also in the process of launching a virtual or online extension of Dream Run Camp called Dream Run Club. And that's where, you know, we just have like an online community of like-minded runners, and they get coaching, and, you know, other perks. And so that is quite a bit more scalable. And then, you know, we also are doing stuff with, you know, content creation. You know, we have a weekly event here we call Live, or Dream Run Camp Live, where we have like a professional runner come to the house and do a live Q&A that we stream on YouTube. And then we like slap an intro on it and it lives on our YouTube channel. That's something, if we're able to really, you know, kind of blow it out, could be a revenue generator. You know, you just get sponsors for it. That whole sponsor dimension of the business is, I wouldn't say it's untapped. We have a lot of sponsors, but it's mostly just in kind, like they give us stuff in exchange for us putting them on our website. But that could also be a really healthy revenue source for us down the road. But I need to be patient there. We need to be able to put numbers in front of brand partners that get their attention. So yeah. And then there's also just, you know, for me, like we are in the business of delivering experiences to people. And for me, like, yeah, we are doing that. We're delivering great experiences, but it can get better. I mean, I have all kinds of ideas for how it can be better. So this thing will be continually evolving. So evolving and growing for sure. You know, it's a passion project for me, but I want to treat it as, you know, responsibly, you know, as a real business. You know, because I you know, talking about taking the long view, I would love for this thing to outlive me. And, you know, part of what I'm doing here is kind of nurturing younger talent. So my two assistant coaches, one of them's 20 years younger than me, and one of them's 30 years younger than me. And it's fun to just, you know, kind of bring them along, and get them to a point where they can just confidently shoulder more and more of the responsibility and take more and more, you know, ownership of what we're doing here.
Interesting. And are you still writing?
Oh yeah. There's no off switch for my creativity. Like, yeah. So I'm full of ideas. You know, my dad is 80 years old now, and he's still writing every day. And because I'm a chip off the old block, I expect to be doing the same. Yes.
So we have a question from another student, Cole. Cole, do you want to go on camera and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, outside of running, what is your favorite thing to write about?
I mean, I love, you know, I love storytelling. You know, my dad is a novelist. He can like make up stories about imaginary people. I can't do that. I need a real story to tell. But you know, so and it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't have to be a sports story. I mean, that's mostly what I've done. I wrote a book called Diet Cults, which is about, I was trying to, you know, because I do write about sports nutrition too. And, you know, sometimes you know how it is in the kind of the the public discourse about food and diet, there's all these different opinions and like a lot of disagreement and like, factions, people like who, can't agree on the right way to eat, and kind of like judging people for eating differently. And I just wondered, like, why is this? And so I just did some research on sort of like the history of sort of like the ideologies that surround ways of eating, and like trying to understand like basically like why people can't think straight about food. And so I wrote this book called Diet Cults, which is really, it's about food and it's kind of about history and sociology and not really about sports at all. And I had a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
So at this stage, let me ask you this. When the New York Times article said he's a prolific author, several marathons, now, and it also mentioned the businesses you had started previously, and now, of course, with your illness, you're managing this new business. I could not help but think, how does this guy maintain work-family balance?
Mm-hmm.
How does he make sure that, the spouse, and you said you won the spousal lottery, is happy and, with the time he's giving to the family? How do you do that?
Well, it helps that we don't have children. Yeah, I mean, seriously, it would look a lot different, if we had, children, our own, in the home. So that helps a lot. So my wife has a chronic health condition of her own, and so hasn't been able to work for a long time, and so she just needs a quiet, stable existence, and so for her, it actually, I mean, neither of us is happy that she has her own health issue, but it actually, it makes it easier for me to do 12 different things at once, because, Nataki, my wife, is not like, pulling hard in some other direction. Like, she's just happy to see me engaged and flourishing and paying the bills. And it's a pretty good lifestyle for her too. Like, when we do like live from Dream Run Camp every Thursday, she cooks for everyone. And it gives her a lot of pleasure. It's very rewarding. And so, yeah, we're just, I think every couple just sort of has to figure it out for themselves. And we have a recipe in our relationship that works very well for us. And it probably wouldn't work for a lot of other couples.
I guess you said it well. Every couple has to figure it out among themselves. And I'm so glad to see that the two of you are well attuned on this. Sam Snyder has a question too. Sam, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Sam has had video trouble today, or audio trouble, so I'll ask his question. He has a twofold question, which is, how much of running do you think is mental versus physical? And second, how realistic? I mean, yes, it might be possible, but how realistic is it for someone who's out of shape and busy with work, family, to be able to run a marathon eventually? So both those questions.
Yeah. So the first question, I like to answer that one by saying mostly both. It's mostly physical and it's mostly mental, because it really does feel that way. I mean, it's undeniably physical, right? There are there's a well-known physiological test called a VO2 max test, and it just, you hop on a treadmill and run at increasing speeds until you can't, and you're breathing into a mask, and it measures how well you're able to consume oxygen while you're running, and it's very, very predictive of success or potential in running. And so if you have a high VO2 max, you're probably going to be a pretty good runner, and if you have a very low one, you're probably limited in how much you can develop as a runner, and that's just a reality. But it's also there's also abundant research demonstrating that various mental traits or psychological traits are highly predictive of running performance as well. One of them is known as inhibitory control, which is, it's just the ability to override impulses in the service of a greater goal. So the example I always give is like, if you're trying to lose weight, and someone offers you a slice of German chocolate cake that you really don't need, your impulse will be, I'm going to eat it because I love German chocolate cake. But if you have a high level of inhibitory control, you might be able to say, you know what, I'll save it for another time because like I have this other goal of losing weight. And you need to be able to do that when you're running too, because if you get 20 miles into a marathon, it gets really hard. And there's a voice in your head saying, let's just quit. But then there's another voice in your head saying, no, this really matters to me. And you override that impulse. So if you're really good at inhibitory control, you're also likely to become good at running as well. So, you know, it takes a lot of both. And then in terms of like, you know, just, you know, when my dad ran his first marathon in 1983, it was pretty rare. Like I didn't have any friends whose dads or moms were running marathons, but it's really changed a lot. And you know, I would say almost anyone with any lifestyle can do it. You don't have to have, you can have a demanding job, you can have a family, and you don't have to have like a deep background in running. Because I know people, I've just described people I know who have run marathons. And so it's doable. It takes a little bit of like, you know, just kind of making space for it and like building a habit. And the key thing is like really keeping it fun. So it doesn't feel like an obligation or a chore. It has to be, you know, you shouldn't do it because you feel obligated to. It should be something you want to do. And then you just find ways to make it sustainable and enjoyable for you. And you can get there.
Wonderful. And at this time, let me invite any other students who have any questions to ask. They can raise their hand and we'll call on them. In the meantime, let me respond to something you had said earlier about, you know, in response to the first question. I don't know if you've heard this, but there's a very famous test called the marshmallow test.
Yes.
Somebody did with the kids, right? And if you have heard, then you know that kids who were able to resist the temptation of, you know, immediate gratification, they found that they tended to have, you know, better outcomes in life. And that's kind of what you were describing, just for adults.
Yeah, I mean, running, that's really what it is. It's an exercise in delayed gratification because, you know, it's not like a fun sport. There's no ball, there's no teammates, you know, it's just competitive exercise. And all right, well, I mean, but runners aren't masochists. There has to be some reward, and there is. You know, there are lots of rewards, but it is very much a marshmallow test where, you know, it feels really good when you train for months and then slog your way through a marathon and then cross a finish line and you get that medal. It feels really, really good, and yet something that you carry with you. You know, can actually change you as a person going through an experience like that. But, you know, there's a lot of, you know, discipline and sacrifice and hard work that comes before that. And so, yeah, if you choose to, you know, become a runner and go down this path, you are really doing a marshmallow test every day. You know, you're training yourself in that, you know, delayed gratification.
Wonderful. I think this leads us very well to our last question, which is, what is one advice you would like to share with students about to embark on their career post-college?
Yes. You know, for me, I mean, I'm speaking from experience, you know, it's easy if you're on a path that has been laid out for you ahead of time. You know, if you want to, you know, if you want to become, you know, a top executive at a major multinational corporation, that, you know, you don't have to be a pioneer to do that. You know, you just have to like follow the path. But, you know, as you know, the society is changing and economic, you know, the business environment is changing. I think there are more and more opportunities to chart your own path that isn't already laid out for you. And I would just encourage people to not be afraid of that, and to know that it can work out fine. And you may have to like bumble around a bit and make a few, false starts in different directions. But it's, you can find your own way. Just like think about what you love doing, think about what you're good at. And then, if there's a path laid out for you already, great. But if there isn't, you can make one.
Wonderful. And that's very good advice. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today. I found this conversation incredibly informative and enlightening. I wish you the best in your venture, and I'm sure the students do too, as well as in sort of the health challenge that you had to deal with suddenly, which led to all of this. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And thank you all. I really enjoyed myself.
Is it okay if the students reach out to you via email or LinkedIn or anything?
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you and have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.